Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining yourself, and it also looks like joining with me and many others on this Sunday morning doing the meditation. So welcome back. Take a couple of moments to secure our space and time, and most importantly, the intention and attention to do this meditation, and followed by a talk. If you are familiar with the procedure, I will do a short prayers at the beginning. These prayers are mainly to in-tune the mind and attention and intention for a person who's doing Buddhist meditation, to respect, to remember the qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and the importance of cultivating the loving kindness, compassion in our everyday life. So with these thoughts, I will firstly lead you into the prayers, and then these prayers, if you have a copy with you, it's called Refuge and Generation Bodhicitta. We will do bilingually, twice in Tibetan, once in English. And likewise, the Four Imaginables, twice in Tibetan and once in English. During this, you should make this not just as a formality to do the prayers before meditation, but make the prayer themselves as a form of intent, that is as content of the words. You should knowingly say, feel, and do, and stay with the prayers and arousing this amazing attention, which registers the great devotion to the infinite qualities of the enlightened, great selfless, enlightened beings and their legacy and the living tradition it carries, their legacy. So with this mind, join your hands at the heart.
And
May there be free from suffering, and the cause of suffering may they never bar from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. Sit fully present in a correct, carefully pose, correct meditation posture. Observe the stillness of the posture from your feet all the way to the top of your crown. During this first of the 3 slots of meditation, we'll just simply focus our attention to keep the correct meditation posture. That consists of 4 sets of mindfulness. Mindful of doing, the positioning, the posture, knowing the meaning of each of the posture, and checking and correcting if your body is a bit too stiff or too slack. Slowly adjust, and then feel the whole act of doing, knowing, and checking the posture as a deeply calming effect that registers the stability of the posture, the balance. The posture that is not impeded by stiffness, so the balance, the water, and awareness that checks, improves the quality, the fire. And inside, that aware of all the above and understand is the oxygenation of the whole body in mindfulness. So I leave you to it. You simply stay with not just silent but engaging actively in positioning the posture, knowing, checking, and then improving, and then calmly registering the bliss that there is in meditation. You can pace your scanning and take a mini break after a little while. Put this roughly for the next 10 minutes. Take a couple of mini breaks, but never allow it to go slack or dull or sleepy. And this is the mindfulness of keeping the mind, guarding the posture of the correct Vairochana posture. keeping one's posture of the body that you have been mindfully guarding and staying with the posture. Now shift your focus of attention on the in-breath when you're inhaling, in the spreading breath when you're spreading the oxygen in the lungs, and then as the outgoing breath, as you breathe out, you shall follow the in-breath by doing it, not just merely passive following, doing it actively. As you inhale, do the mindfulness of inhaling. Know you're inhaling positive thoughts and see the oxygen bringing in all the healing energies from the nature, from all things, and feel the sensation of oxygen rushing into your nostrils. Follow that, and then as you spread the oxygen in the lungs, mindfully, consciously do the spreading, and know it touches and soothes and heals and rejuvenates, and witness it's going into the red blood streams, flooding your whole nervous, and feel completely rejuvenated. And then as you breathe out, consciously do the breathing out, the carbon, knowing that you're releasing the tiredness, the stress in the world. Oh, you breathe out, and dark carbon release, and feel mindfully relieved. In this way, do each round breath, as that's all there to do, mindfully. Mentally count in the back roughly up to 6 rounds, and then take a conscious mini break, during which you may blink your eyes or the position of your body improve. Then again start another bout of 6 or more rounds, so that you mindfully watch the qualified rounds of breath that is qualified by consciously doing, knowing, seeing and feeling all 3 segments of the breath. Without any distraction, dullness, forgetfulness, or laziness. Keep the body straight and keep doing mindfully. Guard the mindfulness of watching the rounds of breath. maintaining the stillness of one's attention in the posture and the breath. During this third and last segment of meditation, we will increase our resolution of concentration in following, doing, knowingly, consciously, witnessing and feeling the in-breath, and likewise with the spreading of the oxygen in the body, and likewise with the outgoing of the breath. You do each round carefully, but end of each round, count that mentally, and we aim to do up to 21 rounds, preferably not without losing the count. If you did lose the count, then simply stay calm and take a mini break, start again. If you do succeed to reach all the way to the number 21, and still have your left time, now do a reverse counting. Start from 21 at the end of each round of breath, and then do the next 20, the next 19, so that one is meticulously remembering the count and uncompromised, super qualified round breath that is super qualified by quality of your attention, the doing, knowing, seeing and feeling, without any dullness or laziness or forgetfulness of doing all the above. Ozamje namje sambada loye jara jadarawa jejo dumo debaye chejengalo godozo godendrede intelligence possession of it, So good morning once again. Thank you for that time that you gave to do the meditation. And now today's topic of the talk is the concept of isolation from the Buddhist perspective as a very relevant topic because we are all having to observe this social isolation due to this spread of the disease and many threat and danger posed by this. So therefore, it's not some subject that we are looking elsewhere or something like that, but rather it's something that we are all affected or having to endure or try to understand of its relevance or meaning in this very given situation. But I'm going to address the subject from the point of view of Buddhism, and every topic in Buddhist teaching can be dealt with by contextualizing the topics, the isolation in the four bases of the Four Noble Truths. So first we look at the problem that isolation is, which is the truth of suffering. By looking at the definition of isolation, isolation has the meaning of you being separated, you having to be somewhere far away and maybe alone and maybe disallowed to do certain things and inaccessible, can't go, can't meet people, do various things, and therefore people are suffering. People are suffering because they think it's a draconian rule has been imposed on people, and therefore people are already complaining. It is said the number of people increasing the taking of alcohol, 70% of the Australian population said to have dramatically increased their consumption of alcohol during this last few weeks period than before. Taking alcohol is already quite a lot of people, they think it's enjoyment, and actually they are trying to mask their own sufferings. So therefore isolation to many people is a suffering. Suffering because it is not even enabling them to be with the loved ones. Like people who have their relatives dying in the hospital, they're not even allowed to go and be next to them. So therefore, the suffering of death is bad enough. Being isolated, not being able to be next with the dying is even more suffering. So there's just the general, suffering is there due to isolation, and therefore people feeling lonely, people not able to do work, they're not able to be places and spaces where they need to be, and because of that, they think they are restricted from what they want to do, And in many ways, people are therefore not able to make useful of themselves. Their time seems to be much longer, and in many ways, isolation is a form of a home imprisonment. People in prison think the time that they're spending there is much longer than actually it is, because they feel they have to face their own demon of themselves. So that therefore, definitely, you can see the isolation is the truth of suffering, the truth of suffering of change. In human realms, it's the truth of suffering of change, because previously we were able to go to places and be wherever we need to go, and so we are not isolated. We are interacting with everyone. We are able to do various things, be when we need to go, and do things for each other, and so on. And then all of a sudden, this freedom, this movement was disallowed. And this disallowing of the, of course, rule is because of the even greater suffering spread by the disease. So therefore, only where this spread of this disease could be contained is by social isolation. The people who refuse to understand that are actually having more suffering on top of that. So that's a suffering of change, obviously, and maybe even suffering of suffering. Government tried to put these rules so that suffering could be reduced, but people are actually making more suffering out of it by reacting to it, calling it draconian, and therefore breaking many of the rules, and then getting more infringement and being fined for breaking the isolation rules. So you can see the suffering of suffering is also generated. Not to mention the suffering of all-pervasive conditioning, because of I and me, and why should not go there where I want to go, and so this sense of I-ness and grasping to what I want to do. So therefore you can see the isolation is a suffering indeed, suffering of suffering, and no wonder people are trying to mask that by drinking more alcohol. Can you believe it? And it is said the number of people needing mental health counseling has dramatically increased because people are not able to cope by having to face their own mind. Usually they can go out and be some use for others, and they don't have to face that. So in many ways, isolation is also one of the corrective measures of the people who have committed serious crime against humanity are also locked in isolation. But it may look to the prisoner as they are being punished, but society is actually trying to help the person to rehabilitate themselves. But little do they know, little do they feel that they can do that. They're actually brooding the anger and so on, even more so. Quite a lot of people in isolation commit suicide and feel useless and meaningless, and therefore no purpose to live. So therefore, there's no doubt this isolation could be looked at as truth of suffering. Now, let's look at the truth of the origin of this suffering. Why is this isolation have to be such a suffering when actually those who intend to employ these rules is try to avoid the social catastrophe? Why are we finding suffering? Is because we are desiring what I want. Our true origin of suffering is not isolation. True origin of suffering is our own wanting to react to the rule as being some imposition from the government and some other people taking their personal civil liberty or freedom, and thereby craving to go places, craving to do things, craving to eat things, craving to buy things, and so therefore always all about me and what I want. And so therefore true origin of suffering is not isolation. isolation may look like a condition. So therefore, just like we usually misapprehend our true origin of suffering, of what is not what people did to us or what appears to do, but our own anger, our own selfishness, our own craving, our own I and me first. So therefore, the true origin of suffering of this isolation is not government rule, not even the virus. It's our craving, our wanting to react to that. True origin of suffering. If the isolation and this rule is true of suffering, why they say we are producing less greenhouse because everybody is in isolation? Our Mother Nature is celebrating because people are producing less. So obviously, it is not creating suffering in the atmosphere. So therefore, true origin of suffering, neither the virus nor the government rules are true origin of suffering. We often misunderstand that all the time. We never get to look within the bottom of the root cause of suffering is our own selfishness and craving and desiring and wanting to keep your job, wanting to make more profit, wanting to become whatever, want to be with people, whatever. So all those things that we desire, we crave those. These are the true origin of suffering. So that's why there's a lot to understand from this. The true origin of suffering, the secondary origin of sufferings, we have the condition of suffering is the rule, and the rule of isolation, and caused by, this is directly caused by the spread of the virus. But the intention of the government is actually very, very altruistic, very responsible. So therefore, their intention is not to punish people, try to avoid people from dying. They call try to flatten the curve. They call it. If they can flatten the curve, that's their intention. Their intention is not flatten the curve of your desire. Flatten the curve of your craving. Their intention is that. They are not cause of suffering. They are just a condition that we are childishly reacting to this isolation as being taking our liberty, freedom, and job, and so on. Look at the government. How much stimulus package? How many billions of dollars? All of a sudden, it's pouring into the financial system. So therefore, obviously it's not the government. Obviously, it's not. It is our own. Very difficult to recognize. Very difficult to recognize. See, the afflictions are very difficult to recognize. They're so subtle. So we are so deluded in thinking is the disease and the government rule is the cause of suffering. True origin is not. True origin means there is a false origin that we are pointing our finger to. It's always usually the case. We're always pointing finger to someone or something, but when it is actually our own selfishness, self-grasping, to our craving, our desire, our activities, these are the true origins. So we need to look at the true origin of suffering is not isolation at all. From the Buddhist point of view, it's even totally opposite. In Buddhism, the isolation and practice in solitude is highly praised, highly sought after opportunity for people to seek the greatest spiritual advantages. So therefore, let's talk about the other truth, the truth of path, noble truth of path, noble truth of cessation. Yes, exactly. The truth of path should be discussed first, because truth of path is the cause. If you follow the path, then the result, truth of cessation. So. And it is said that one of the many characteristics of a wise person is who is not only fond of solitude, but also do spend a lot of time on his own. Because on his own, when the wise is able to stay away from everyone, he is not missing or craving people's attention. He knows the demerits of associating with the fools. And so, there's only bad enough to have one fool. You don't need to concern with another fool. So if you're alone as a fool, you might be able to recognize your foolishness. But when you're with other fools, you keep thinking it's the flaws of other fools. That is the cause of the problem. So that's what some of the greatest spiritual realized beings, saints and yogis and masters and arhats and bodhisattvas and milarepas and tsongkhapas and sakya panditas and all those great mahasiddhas of India or arhats, they are forest dwellers. They deliberately sought to seek solitude and away from the hustle, bustle, noise of the childish. These days we have lots of people wearing robes and they're shaven, but they can never actually spend a quality retreat on their own. They always with together as if they become more friendly with one person than before. So you never know how many person who are wearing robes are actually practicing when they couldn't spend even a couple months in retreat. The retreat is the only time when the great masters, practitioners, and servants and yogis actually flourish and gain realization. So those who are on the Noble Truth of Path, those who are following the Truth of Path, they must seek solitude. Shantideva spent a great deal, about half a dozen verses on his chapter on the Bodhisattva way of life, on meditation, in praise of solitude. These days, when we have our retreat centers that are built somewhere, established somewhere in quiet and remote places, people say, it's so far. Far from whom? Far from the lazy, far from the people who don't have any commitment to practice. No, in the old days, they were highly praised. Solitude, virtues of solitude. It is in solitude that practitioners can actually face their own karma and affliction and bring the Dharma on. And therefore, truth of the path is simplicity, is a lack of desire, is good discipline, is being able to stay away from everyone, disassociating from the fools, and resorting to quiet, peaceful, tranquil, natural setting. So where does all the isolation comes from? Isolation from whom? Society. Isolation whom? From the friends who only associate with the negative things. We only do things when we are associating with people who are negative. When we are alone, we can't do any harm even to others, let alone to ourselves. So therefore, where did the Buddha achieve enlightenment? How did Milarepa spend enlightenment? They spent time in isolation, time in great wilderness that nobody would actually find their way even to get there. Not just to go there to enjoy the nature or something, so that they can actually meditate in simplicity, in away from all the noise. Like that, so being on the path requires the discipline to rise early, being watchful of time, so that you are not interrupted by others. Everyone these days, due to prior commitment, they can't even do this or that. Prior commitment, they call it, a very nice way of putting it. It means too much association with people. So therefore, during isolation, one actually have time to look at the neglected duties at home, at least, and then face one's own unaddressed, deep-seated problems of enmity and anger and guilt and strife and judgment and negativity that is actually staining your own mind. It is during isolation when actually one is actually able to look after your own physical well-being, that you will not overfeed yourself, you moderate your food intake, you watch the time to meditate, and these are the practice, these are the discipline. Merely being able to have some kind of putting on a uniform on your body and not actually spending any time in solitude does not fit the title of a forest dweller. All the monastics basically has to spend time in solitude. If they don't, they don't. Even if they study volumes of scriptures, memorize them, they are all parrot-like chatterers and dialecticians. No dialecticians have got enlightenment. Thousands of them together. There's hardly any one of them willing to go and spend time in meditation. With some of the great yogis in Tibet, are produced not in the big monasteries. They are scholars, they're dialecticians, they wrote many, many voluminous commentaries, and that's about it. Sure, out of them, few may have gone in the mountains and done the retreat. But those little hermitages, those little humble kind of cottages, monastery, where they have very, not even say a couple hundred monks and nuns, where actually we have produced some of the greatest number of yogis. Because these yogis are those who spend time in yoga of being alone. Yoga of being alone. Then you're able to attend to the yoga of sleeping, yoga of rising, yoga of eating, yoga of all the around-the-clock activities. You mindfully, abundantly, with good natural understanding how to incorporate them as a spiritual practice, then one is able to practice. So therefore, Noble Truth of the Path, in the greatest achievement of the enlightenment of the Buddha and a realization of great masters like Tilopa, Naropa, Virupa, and Marpa, Milarepa, and some of the great other masters. It seems to me Milarepa comes first, as when we're talking about Tibetan teachers. Others who have written many volumes doesn't come in my mind even to mention them as yogis. I'm not saying they didn't, but it's just naturally one who spent most time in asceticism, in solitude, alone from everywhere. They actually managed to practice the truth of the path. Truth of the path is self-discipline, meditation, and it is through this they gain realization, not through just study without any meditation. There's a lot of people who study dialectics. Nowadays they're even studying science, I'm told. I don't know how they're going to help their meditation and let alone realization. So it's very important in Buddhism, the person who do the meditation, it is even bodhicitta. Even the Bodhisattva's way of life by heart. So what? If you don't spend doing meditation and solitude, they say ultimate bodhicitta cannot be received in ceremonies or rituals or vows even. You have to realize in meditation. Even the greatest volumes of teaching you have heard and contemplated, that what we call the wisdom derived from meditation excels all realizations. Conceptual, theoretical, logical, dialectical eloquency doesn't win you any enlightenment. Okay, so therefore one has to. So it means you have to do meditation. Where do you do meditation? In solitude, away from the hustle and bustle of city life, away from many activities, away from a diary that is filled with so many appointments with all these people, as you're so much needed. So people feel they're so busy, They can't do anything because they're so busy with laziness, busy being busy and never having actual time to go and do what the Buddha did. Buddha left everything aside and went all the way into the solitary and spent at least 6 years. Look at the number of years Milarepa spent. Look at the Lama Tsongkhapa, how many years he meditated. He was not just a philosopher. People think he's a dialectician. Lama Tsongkhapa was just as great meditator. He did all the mantra practices more than anyone talks about in that tradition they think they belong to. That teacher has to be remembered as a great yogi who spent years in solitude. Only then people like him earn the status of the name he is revered for. Not just writing commentaries, not writing many books, like lots of people write books these days too, but where does their realization match? The realization doesn't match. Even people who write books, they always go somewhere quiet in a cottage, and then they can write their books. So many of the people who have achieved great deeds in social or science or whatever, they did so when they have the quality time for themselves to focus their attention to what they do. So therefore, the noble truth of the path in Buddhism is meditation. And to do the truth of the path in meditation, where you do the right view, you do so when you're away from everywhere. So it's not a punishment. It's not a curse. So actually it's good, When we have this, you can't now say, I don't have time to meditate, because you can't go around outside and have this or that appointment. You're always home and you can't do. So these days, a lot of people are interacting with us through in the various sessions we run, because they're all at home and we're all available. So therefore, that shows that this has actually maybe revitalized your spiritual interest and need to practice, because you have a lot of time on your hand. So instead of resorting to alcoholism, which other people do, or other activities, one should learn to compare the notes. All the empowerment and teachings you've attended to, how many of them are just philosophical, conceptual, theoretical? What's the point? Go and close the chapters, books, and do some quality meditation, like the simple sitting meditation that hardly anybody do. They talk about it, and a lot of people have attended some Tibetan Buddhist scholars giving teachings on calm abiding, but they said they never sat even 10 minutes quietly. They just talk about it, theory about it, and system, stages, all these, but never actually led even a meditation for even 10 minutes, let alone for 10 days. So that shows dry theory has not been achieved. So therefore, the wetness of realization comes through being able to spend time doing meditation in isolation. Then we can see the truth of origin, truth of cessation. Yeah, all the truth of cessation. One will be able to, because otherwise people who study, never did meditation. Their ego becomes so bloated they just can't even have the basic decency to see others with respect. They think they are so high, their status, their position, and the hierarchy went high. They can't even look at others with respect. So the ego and the pride has never been dealt. So that shows that without doing meditation and purification practices, you never overcome your problems. So people who have done meditation and isolation retreat, either by number or time or by science, in Tibetan Buddhism we call, you can do retreat by number of months or number of mantras or the prayers or the signs of your accomplishment. A lot of people do sign, so the number and the time retreat, but even that you don't know what they're doing in the retreat. They're doing in the retreat. Are they really reading books and some sewing, knitting some sweaters or like that? They don't actually follow the instructions very correctly. So no wonder people who spend some time. They said they were going to retreat, but they come out after retreat even more angry. That's not the truth of cessation. That's just exacerbation. So therefore, in isolation, person hasn't followed the practice of meditation properly. Of course, even isolation could be like a self-punishment. Some of them are like that. They're just so worked out in their mind, their head. They never brought the teachings from the head to the heart, and it didn't do anything. But those who spend quality time in retreat, they usually find the truth of cessation. They come out with less enmity, and maybe no enmity at all. And they have less arrogance. And so all the study they did has created a lot of ego. But if the water of the humility didn't wash their pride, if your 5 afflictions hasn't been reduced, there is no truth of cessation. There's an increase of arrogance, pride, competitiveness, prejudice, judgment towards other people. It means these people have never practiced the truth of the path. When they didn't practice the truth of the path, there's no sign of their afflictions and behaviors and attitude having any sign of being mended or repaired. So, but those people those people who did spend time in quality meditation retreat and in isolation, usually it's minimum of the training of the lamas in Nyingma and Kagyu and Sakya tradition. People don't call lamas because they wear robes. They have to spend at least 3.5 years solitary meditation retreat. Then only they're given the title lama. Of course, even that could be a bit sort of what you call superficial, but if people themselves didn't do the quality meditation. In any way, the people who do spend doing a quality meditation and retreat in overall should have some sign of truth of cessation. Some signs of truth of cessation in terms of reducing their enmity, anger, arrogance, and developing humility and contentment, and being able to respect other people, not very greedy with the things. So they have to actually show how much of the negative how the karma and bad negative habits are being culled by the time they spend in retreat and isolation. So that shows that if you see some people who may be harmed by someone, but they do not retaliate, that's the sign. People who practice truth of path will have certain degree of patience, not because the question isn't about who is right and who is wrong. His question is who has the merit to not retaliate, who has the merit to see the futility of retaliation, futility of arrogance, and therefore accept the difficulties as one way of what we call doing tonglen with one's past and with others, and therefore accept that with great degree of humility and being able to stay as a practitioner who actually learns to cull his own mind and afflictions rather than seeing the faults and flaws of others. Those who have practiced the truth of path and are on the truth of path, they usually will not go into the idea, into the role of exacerbating suffering and denying the suffering, rejecting the suffering. They will embrace the suffering. Sufferings aren't caused by others. Sufferings are caused by one's own individual karma and afflictions, and due to this reason, they actually see the Dharma as the most effective remedy for themselves to practice, which is to change their own attitude. From the deluded sentient being's perception, they have to at least try to experientially transform into the transformative yogic expression. A meditator, a practitioner should have inner resources, Dharma they call, instructions they call it, knowledge they call it. All of this for what? If they do not go to cull and reduce their own afflictions. And so this therefore shows that instead of being angry and upset and disturbed by isolation, one actually relishes the aloneness and loneliness and time that one actually have the opportunity to be in retreat. And almost it's a great ripening of the one's merit to be able to go to retreat. So therefore one should not interrupt other people who wanted to do practice retreat if their life situation, circumstances give them the power to remain in that. So therefore the isolation in Buddhism can be looked at from these four angles. One, from the truth of suffering, how much it's a problem, how much is another is from the true origin of suffering. Is it the isolation that's the problem, or our craving, our desire, our attachment to our work and our income or our whatever, some kind of superficial feelings? This therefore is the true origin of suffering, is one's craving and desire and all the negativities associated with that. So that's, in order to deal with these two problems, the truth of suffering and true origin of the problem, one needs to practice truth of the path. Yeah, so therefore, the time you spend in meditation and time you spend in study and reflecting, contemplating on the meanings, is better achievable to do when you are free. People usually so time poor. and now they are time rich. This is like last 100 years nobody have been given this kind of isolation rules by any government. So now they're going likely to extend. So one should use the next 4 weeks, at least in Australia, during the lockdown, what most effective things, important things that you have neglected, you haven't paid enough attention to, can go and do. Maybe they are not just necessarily spiritual things. What are the things you can actually do that needs to do? There are a lot of things in your list of things to do that may be going to go over, and try to catch up with things that are running a little bit behind, particularly inner works, particularly deep contemplation. Do some healing and make peace with your past. And spend some quiet moment so that you actually are having a conversation between your heart and head. Don't just have conversation in the head. In isolation and quietness, you actually have opportunity to bring those conversations in the head down to your heart. And don't say or write everything that comes into your deluded head. And a lot of people like that. They think they are a retreat or something. Their retreat has been completely violated by their own lack of discipline, their own distractedness, and when they come out retreat, are they better? No, it's worse than they went in, and that shows they have never actually put the practice with correct practices. They're completely lazy and distracted and suffer from immense attention deficit as well as immense intention deficit. Just doing for themselves, for some whatever, try to make up for something they didn't get in life. They want that meditation retreat to do, but in reality, they didn't have any altruistic motivation. If they're due to the intention deficit, which we call lack of bodhicitta, in Buddhism we don't know so much about attention deficit. It's intention deficit, the lack of the right intention, lack of the right devotion, lack of true humility towards the triple gem. And when one doesn't have refuge in the triple gem, then one's faith is very wonky. Anything could stifle it very quickly. When people are starting to put faith in people and status and in names, these are never recommended by the Buddha. Buddha said, rely on the Dharma, not on the person. Because when one's intention is so soiled by the wrong intention, either due to whatever attachment to people or infatuation, and they think they're going to liberate you from your sorrows or something. Buddha never said even he can liberate you from your sorrows. It's you alone. But only if you spend time with good intention and good discipline, away from the noise, away from the negative friends and associating with them. If you consort with the negative, deluded people and then listen to them, and then that's where your little mind becomes so hijackable by smallest even dose of negativities of others. That's why one should be isolated. The more you are separate, away from those deluded ones, your own delusion become much more dealable by the practices. But when you are actually away from things, but you are still interacting with those things, your mind, even in isolation, does not grow, does not evolve, because one is not addressing the real practice with good intention. So that's why it's a very excellent opportunity to, during the time of isolation, what are some of the very, key problems of your life's problem that are caused by self-centeredness and ego grasping. And so this period of isolation should not be seen as something that bores you or to remove your freedom, but actually it gives you freedom to know the true what you call physiology of the suffering or psychology of the suffering. Where is the suffering coming from, and how it can be best addressed? So that's why the practice of the what we call isolation or solitude in Buddhism is highly sought after, and usually people are always waiting to get an excellent opportunity to have time on one's own. Because on one's own, when you really pay good attention, we can have good conversation in our heart and then melt away all those cold, chilly feelings towards something or someone due to your selfishness and bad conversation with other people. Then you may even achieve some of the great blessings of what we call in high advanced practice, we call physical isolation, verbal isolation, mental isolation. And that means isolation means freedom of your body addicted to things, and freedom of speech addicted to negative conversations, freedom of your mind even posting and thinking bad thoughts. You are completely devoid of that. Therefore your mind becomes spaciously liberated and freed from those fetters and afflictions. So therefore we can look at the isolation from Buddhist perspective under these Four Noble Truths. So we're going to conclude the talk here, but I would like to remind all of you who may not be aware that this afternoon at 2 o'clock a number of Tibetan Buddhist teachers in Australia are going to do a special Facebook Live prayer service at 2 p.m. And so you'll be able to meet all these teachers who are all from different parts of Australia. And each of them will give a little talk followed by some prayers. And I have posted the prayers on the center's visitors list on the right side. If you check the prayer that I will do is already on the center's Facebook on the side. So if you access that, either print it before then, you can join us then. So beside this, of course, we are doing on Wednesday nights, we are doing special Tibetan Buddhist preliminary practices, and so you're most welcome to join in, but this is mainly through Zoom, so if you want, you should request a link to it. We can definitely send that to you. So otherwise, please have a good day and take a couple of moments to share these things that we have been reflecting during this talk and during this deep listening by you. And so I'm sure that quite many people are definitely greatly stressed by the this current crisis, and many people's lives has been lost, and many more people's lives are going to be affected by this. So therefore we will dedicate the merits of this session as I chant these during the dedication merits. So if you don't know the prayers, just still join in. If you know the prayers, you can say this together. Zona deya damje sebanye tomne nyebe dana bamjane yegana je bala dubaye sebe zalen rawa jo bade mere meve awaga dade vamen zenge omneje may I libere Robin from the ocean of Odesene de Jodam Jerenje Jendele Dage Sunamanda Gandoba Tene Drugu Tijo Dambeje Rinje Tema Mebe Nejoje Here Damahaya Najeje Wade Wamere Rahabagu meo bimbe kamsen lebezo, triho dama hayana jiji, jamba bawe, chidaren jamba da, gundu zambu deyan deyendu, tedai gunji jesu daloje, gewa dida damje, radu ngo gare jaman juji niwade, esa mandra badra jidlawe, following all the example, Asha dedicate the matter, Chanju Semjo Rembo Eche, Maje Bana Maje Juraje, Keba Nyamba Mebaya, Kone Gondum Bewa, Jo Meda Excellent Body Jeda, Treba Wait has not yet answered, Where's Bebe Bome angry, really without degeneration. Thank you, everyone. See you next time. Take care.